Hi, I'm Jennifer Milner, Pilates trainer, ballet coach, and movement specialist. Everything that we do together is going to be in service of making you a stronger, healthier, more efficient dancer, mover, and hopefully human. Please remember that these videos do not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, and are just for informational purposes only. If you have any issues, please consult your physician. Let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about your center and the anatomy of finding your center. I like to use the term center. Some people say core, some people say column. I think center describes the whole trunk area for us, and we're not looking for that tiny nugget of perfection. We're looking for a nice chorus of interacting muscles and connective tissue that will help stabilize your trunk and hold the rest of your body. So this guy is going to be our center. If you're expecting anatomy books and pictures and lifelike demonstrations, this is not it. This is arts and crafts anatomy today, because I find it a really helpful way to picture what's going on in your body as we kind of build it from the inside out. So keep in mind, this is not to scale. This is not perfection, and it's not including all of the muscles. But these are some of the big areas that I think that you want to keep in mind when looking at your center. So first of all, I'm going to start with your pelvic floor. I've taken 3 TheraBands and stapled them together, and they look a little bit like a hammock. Right? I'm going to put them on top. I know that's not where they go, but I'm just going to tape it down here. If you see any of this light tan tape doesn't represent anything. It just represents me taping it on to the ball. So there is our pelvic floor. And you can see how it kind of fits on, if the tape will stay, it kind of fits on and holds, and you feel that little bit of a hammock there. Now, I'm also adding in the bones, the sits bones and the pubic bone. So actually what's going to look like is more like this. And you'll see pubic bone, tailbone, and our sits bones. And they go right underneath and sort of hold everything. And that makes part of the framework. And you can see how the pelvic floor can start to come out there. And you can imagine what the pressure of your center will do to make your Velcro popsicle sticks come apart. Now, we'll make to that pelvic floor. And so you'll feel that pelvic floor start to push. And you can imagine that's one of the things that we need that pelvic floor is to help hold it. I'm going to put our popsicle sticks down because I'm not going to tape them on. Now, we've got the bottom, but what goes on top of that? Well, in our world, Play-Doh, and that is going to be our top, which, any guesses? That's right, our diaphragm. So our top is our diaphragm, which looks like a beautiful, especially because I've mushed 2 colors together here, it looks like a beautiful umbrella or gorgeous mushroom cap that opens up and blossoms underneath your rib cage. But it's a beautiful top, and I often think that it's like a mushroom cap that everything sort of lives under, like a hidden forest. So that is going to be our top. The diaphragm, of course, helps us breathe, but it also attaches to our spine and has a very interesting effect on the rest of your center. So it's good to work on your diaphragm and give it a little bit of love. So we have the diaphragm on top. We have the nice hammock underneath of our pelvic floor. And then if we go to the back, we're going to see a lace up of muscles. This is not to scale. Again, these are little teeny tiny muscles called multifidi that go from one vertebra to the next or one vertebra to another one a couple steps up. And I like to think of them as a lace up. They don't actually crisscross, but I like to think of them as lacing up. And I imagine that as they draw together, they really help stabilize the spine. So they're going to run up and down our spine, and I'm going to tape them on right about here, using our pipe cleaners to imagine that little lace piece of our spine. Now, the last thing I'm going to put on the back, my friend Dinah told me to include this, and I do what Dinah tells me because I happen to agree with her and because she's really smart. I am going to include our thoracolumbar fascia. So I have some netting that is from a bag of oranges, but I love the netting because it's got this tensegrity to it. You feel it pull in one direction and you see the effect that it has on a completely different part of the netting. And that thoracolumbar fascia fits down here and goes right over your sacrum and up into your lower back. And it hosts some really big muscles like your glutes and your lats, which when they get tight can really start to pull on that thoracolumbar fascia and make it really tight. So it can have a big effect on your center and can be one of the spots that you want to check in on and say, hey, I'm feeling some tightness in my back. What's going on in the muscles that attach back here? It's also nice to think of the thoracolumbar fascia as that cargo net for your lower back and imagine that it's doing a fair amount of work trying to hold stuff, especially if we're not supporting it with the muscles that we need to support. So this is from the back. I've got my multifidi, I've got my thoracolumbar fascia, and I still have my diaphragm and my pelvic floor. And then we're going to turn to the side and we're going to go with our psoas. Now our psoas actually starts on our spine, way back here in our lower spine, and comes across through the center of our body, and it comes out through the pelvic floor, through the bones, and attaches right high up on our leg. So it's a hip flexor, but it also works as a stabilizer. It doesn't wrap around like this, it cuts through the inside, but hopefully this will give you an idea of what it looks like as I use the washi tape all the way down. Not the most sticky stuff, but you get the idea. And I'm going to come on to the other side with it as well. So the psoas originates on your lumbar spine, and it crosses a few different vertebrae. Well, that tape is not taping anymore. And it crosses a few different vertebrae. And you can imagine if both sides are pulling on your spine, the effect that it's going to have on that spine, it can actually start to compress your lower back. So it can be one of those things that can start to get a little obnoxious and annoying if it's not getting the proper love and care that it deserves. So we've got that psoas. Well, that tape does not want to stick to this ball. We've got that psoas running around either side. Now we're going to come to the front and we're going to look at our really deep abdominal muscle, which is our transversus abdominis. And we're going to see if that can help hold the psoas on. And our transverse abdominis wraps around, it actually starts on our spine, and it wraps around and attaches in the front in such a way that it pulls like this, and it pulls like this. And it attaches into this long line of fascia in the front. I'm going to tie it here. But you can imagine, sometimes people call it the corset muscle. You can imagine that when you activate that, how it gives your whole center a nice little warm hug. So this is what we use when we're talking about gathering that center and feeling everything pull in. It won't affect actually any bony directional movement, but it will affect all of the soft tissue center in here. Now, we're going to add our obliques. And our obliques are going to go, my tape won't stick, from the center out on diagonals. So you can imagine how the oblique is going to pull like this tape. And we're going to feel that oblique muscle pull on that diagonal, just like we feel it pull on a crunch this way or pulling and holding us as we reach back that way. This muscle is helping me move in that direction. And so they look like a crisscross, but they're actually not two big muscles crisscrossing. There are four muscles there that have very different actions depending on which one is being called upon. But together, when they work, they can really hold nice and stable because they go like that and like this and hold a nice stability there. And then I'm going to add our rectus abdominis to the front. I don't talk about it a lot as a muscle for stability. I consider it more of a muscle for mobility. It's your crunch muscle, your six-pack muscle, and it does more movement than like stability. And I find that that's the one that most people work the most, even as dancers. So I don't really train the rectus abdominis on purpose. It will absolutely work, but I try to get the other muscles to work too. But this will give you a sense of our full center. We've got our diaphragm, our obliques, our rectus abdominis, our transverse abdominis wrapping around here. And then somewhere deep in there, we have our psoas. And then, of course, we have got our multifidi way inside. You can see a little bit of our thoracolumbar fascia peeking out. And of course, not forgetting our pelvic floor and the bones that go underneath and hold it. So that's the anatomy of your center. Everything has a different job, but everything works together to help stabilize or mobilize, depending on what you're asking your body to do. Remember this, you'll never forget it, the next time you're trying to work on finding your center. That's it for today. I hope you found this information useful. And if there's a topic you'd like to see me cover, please be sure to send me a message. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.